The next big short. AMC and Gamestop. March 14th, 2021. Disclosure. All opinions presented here are purely my own and do not represent my firm or anyone associated with it. This is not a recommendation. Do your own homework and due diligence before investing in anything. I spoke about this in a previous post, which I talked about before, but I have more conviction now that we're at the beginning of the next big market correction. I hope I'm wrong. I'm a positive person by nature, but I can't help but think what's potentially happening in the stock market. If you think about probabilities, this is more likely to happen than not. Why? Leverage. It's how you can be really successful and also how you can lose everything. Hedge funds are over-leveraged. When they raise a fund, the amount of money they can use in the market, for example, can go up 5x. Let's do it in simple terms. If they have a $1 billion fund that they raise from people around the world, they can get $5 billion worth of liquidity in the market. How does that work? They use leverage. One way they do this is by what's called, quote, buying on margin, end quote. A margin account is borrowed money from a broker, through usually a bank, that is used to invest in securities or stocks. Trading on margin amplifies gains, but also amplifies losses. Let's use an example. Say I buy $100 of a stock, using $50 that I own and $50 on margin. Now let's say that stock goes up to $200. Instead of doubling my money, which is the case if you would originally put in the $100 from your own account, you quadruple it using margin. So your $50 investment turned into $200, which is a 4x. Now, what happens if the stock drops from $50 to $20? In this case, the investor sells their stock at a loss of $30, and they must pay back the broker for the $50 for a total loss. They get margin called. Because they are trading on margin, the investor lost more than they originally had. Right now, there's a large potential that a bunch of funds on leverage are going to get margin called in the next few months. Why? Gamestop and AMC. What retail has done in gathering thousands, potentially millions of people through the internet to all buy and hold the same stocks is unbelievable. We've never seen it happen in history. It's the true power of the internet. Individuals as a collective against institutions. GameStop and AMC are set for a short squeeze. What does that mean? The price of AMC could just go up to $100 or $200 in the near term. It's $11 stock today. Look what happened with GameStop in January 2021. It went from a single-digit stock to $497 at its peak. Hedge funds shorted GameStop again at the peak, thinking they'd be able to pay back all their shares by driving the price down. But retail has held their shares. If they continue to hold, that's going to cause major disruption to the market. If a short squeeze happens, hedge funds have to buy those shares to cover their short positions or risk going out of business. This assumes that they can cover their shorts at reasonable prices. But what if the price of the stock goes to $500 or $1,000? It is a massive amount of money that hedge funds won't be able to pay back, creating a huge redistribution in wealth from hedge funds to retail. When that happens, the market loses liquidity. Money disappears. All of a sudden, the stocks that were the darlings of the world, like Tesla, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, etc., are going to have significant chunks of shares being sold. Hedge funds have to cover their short positions, and they do that by selling other stocks. The average person is not going to understand what's happening and why stocks across the board are dropping all of a sudden. By understanding the concept of loss aversion, they likely want to sell to take their profits. This creates a downward spiral that could get ugly. All of this could collapse the entire market because of naked shorting, which is illegal. Funds and market makers can create shares of companies out of thin air. They can push it into the market so it looks like there's more supply and therefore the price stays low. What if the supply doesn't really exist? In GameStop's case, hedge funds were shorting 140% of the total float of the stock, which makes no sense. This means that there are 100 shares available that the public can trade, and all of a sudden, there are 140 shares that are short. Those with short positions eventually have to buy the shares available. People online are speculating, based on rumors, that the short float is above 100% as well for shares of AMC. If that's true, and that's a big if, you could have another situation like GameStop. Now, what if multiple stocks short squeeze at the same time? That's a huge problem for hedge funds and market makers. Americans just got their stimulus checks. They're ready to spend money. They have access to the market now like never before. They can gather and communicate through the internet. If tons of individuals across the world gather their effort against hedge funds shorting companies, these guys will lose billions of dollars. This is the game. This is how the market works. For every short, there is always going to be another long. But what if the longs are suddenly thousands or millions of individuals across the world acting in unison and buying a single company? We have literally never seen that in history. Hedge funds. You've used shorting to destroy companies. You've created fake shares in the market that did not exist. That's fraud. It's illegal. How can you create things out of thin air? How can the SEC, what's supposed to be a regulatory body, not see what's happening? Or of course they see what's happening and they don't care. I expect a lot of regulation in the next few years on naked shorting because people are going to want answers. When billions of dollars disappear overnight or over a few weeks or a few months or years because of a short squeeze, a lot of rich people will not be happy. They will blame the system. They will blame millennials. They will blame the internet and Reddit and Robinhood. Welcome to the game of free markets. It's unfortunate because the amount of money they play with in the market has trickle-down consequences. If billions of dollars of money starts to disappear, people will get very nervous. Could the whole thing drop 10% in a day multiple times? Possibly. When GameStop had its short squeeze, the market crashed a little bit, just a couple percent. So on January 25th, 2021, GameStop closed at $76.79 a share. The NASDAQ on the same day closed at $328.11. On January 27th, 2 days after, GameStop closed at $347.51 a share. The NASDAQ on the same day closed at $314.56 a share, so it dropped about 4%. Now, that was one stock. What if multiple stocks squeeze at the same time? It could be a sign of things to come. You also have the bond yield and inflation. Institutions are slowly rotating out of equities and back into bonds. We've had tons of money in equities in the last several years because bonds didn't offer any yields. Institutions had to put their money in high-yielding assets, which have recently been stocks because of low rates. Inflation is also a major concern. When people are vaccinated and back out partying and having fun and spending money, things are going to get pricier. Think about how much money was injected into the global monetary system by the US. like $4+ trillion in the last year. What? That money didn't exist before and was created out of thin air and eventually has to get paid back. Inflation is a major concern because when demand goes high, supply goes low. If supply goes low, things get more expensive. Given all the pent-up demand for people to want to do things are going to start to get pricier. So what does this all mean? What's the point of this? There's a potentially once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to ride the squeeze and turn against the market. This is not a recommendation. This is just how I'm thinking and what I'm betting against. What if I'm wrong? The market continues to go up, more money gets put into the system, and the bubble keeps growing, which it did in 2021. But what if I'm right? This is a generational buying opportunity that will change markets forever, exactly like the Big Short. All of these conditions exist at the same time, and all you need is a catalyst to set everything off. AMC and Gamestop are what I think take the whole thing down. Just following up on this, because I wrote this almost 2 years ago, AMC I do not believe in anymore. I don't think there's anything there. I think the CEO has diluted the share count way too much and ruined retail investors. However, GameStop is revolutionizing the market. Why? They're removing liquidity from the system. How is that happening? People across the world are directly registering their shares. What does that mean? It means they are putting the shares that they have in their name, and they're doing that through the transfer agent called ComputerShare. If you go right now to every quarterly report on the SEC's website for GameStop over the last few quarters, a year ago, or in 2021, GameStop had 0 shares registered. As of the last 10K, which is like usually the quarterly report that they have to report on the SEC, GameStop had 71 million shares out of their 300 registered. 71 million. And that was all retail investors around the world acting together and just directly registering, removing liquidity from the market. This means market makers have created a problem by their own doing that they cannot get out of. And we are at a situation now where every single day that more retail and shares get invested and registered in their name, hedge funds lose liquidity. And I've been saying this for 2 years and writing about this, and I've been wrong up till now. And I have so much belief that this situation is going to change the world. Don't be surprised in a couple years from now if everything changes and everything you thought about markets completely gets thrown on its head, because we are entering a different world and a different time where you look at Tesla, you look at Amazon, you look at Facebook, you look at any of these companies, look where their peak was. Their peak was 2021 and 2022, and they're falling, and some of them are falling fast. So I've talked a lot about this. I've written a lot about this. I'm excited to get this out there. But I just wanted to say this was 2 years ago. And it's crazy to think now that we're still going through this. So whatever happens, just enjoy the ride, and let's see where it goes. Keep going. You're doing great.